Okay, I'd like to call to order the city council work session of Tuesday, March 14th. And would ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. First on the agenda, we'll have public comment. Did you want to make a public comment?
No.
Just ready. Okay. Is there any public comment? No, Jim, you don't have to sit down. You can come back up.
Persuade anybody.
Okay, is there any public comment in the audience? Anybody online?
No.
Okay, so first on the agenda, we have the Cannon Beach Chamber of Commerce quarterly report. Thank you for being prompt and ready.
Yeah, long time no see, Barb.
Yes.
And thank you again for speaking at our breakfast meeting this morning. It's always good to have that interaction between both of our organizations. So on Tuesday, you guys had some questions, so I pointed you back towards a meeting that we had in June, and I'm wondering if y'all had a chance to see that meeting.
Yes.
Did you have questions that I could answer from that? Or you want to just jump into my report currently?
I think it was helpful to watch the June meeting to see the detailed report, but I didn't have any questions.
Okay.
I guess I didn't have a cue to do that, but we were just
Okay.
invited to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke at the public comment section last meeting. So given that some of you had the chance to look at that, and you know, at the end of that meeting, it was a good hour plus long, and the council recommended to us to just give an update of what happens on a quarterly basis, which is what I prepared for you today. And the last quarter was the summer months, which we really don't do much promotion or efforts through the summer as per the contract. So the last presentation was pretty small too. And this time I prepared a handout flyer that I think has all the pertinent checkpoints throughout the contract that are included. And then I do have some more information that I brought, just kind of update for me to share with you. So I was just going to go through this flyer and give you kind of a heads up. So the first thing is the new Cannon Beach magazine has arrived. It came last month. If you all haven't seen it, this is the new cover and the image. We have plenty in the visitor center if you'd like to have some. I could probably bring you a box next time to City Hall if you guys need them, Bruce. Nobody's coming to get them yet. Just so you guys can get a look at it. Here we put out the magazine, and it's a very useful tool for us to send out to other visitor centers, information locations for people to get to know about Cannon Beach. It's also very handy. We give out thousands of them through the visitor center for people that come in and just want to know more about Cannon Beach. This pamphlet also is kind of a what's happening chamber wise. So you'll see the next category is our annual membership awards and who won those awards. We had a really great evening with everybody coming to see who wins. And it was a real fine event for the chamber, which doesn't really have to do with the DMO, but I wanted to explain it to you. On the left-hand side of the column, you'll see the upcoming events for the next couple of months. I'd like to try and give everybody a heads up on those. We update those details on our website as we get them from the various groups that are putting on those events. So 12 Days of Earth Day, we share what we get from them. We update our website as well. So that's falls into the DMO program. On page 2, we kind of get into a lot of the different information that pertains to the marketing program. Last report, I spoke about how we were hiring a marketing agency. This Verde Media is the marketing agency that we've chosen. We spent the last summer months, or not the last 3 months, providing them with all the data, information, connectivity to our marketing efforts so that they can study those, see what we've done, what we have been doing, evaluate where our marketing efforts stand. And then that will then lead us into what our marketing efforts will be once we start with the process of creating a campaign. This has already begun with the marketing committee. Birdie Media came back to us and gave us 12 different topics that they felt were important marketing categories that we could promote Cannon Beach with. And it was the marketing committee's task to then rank those from 1 to 12 to see where we wanted to really focus our efforts in a new marketing campaign coming up. We haven't got those details to provide for this report, but I will share those with you on our next report. On the left-hand column there is the services that the visitor center provides. And that little box below that has the visitor data that requested in the contract. So that's another place where we provide the data that you guys want to see for the DMO contract. Of course, we are updating those on the dashboards. I'm not sure if anybody's had a chance to dive into those dashboards. I'm a little behind on inputting data for those. And some days where I can't really get the data in, and typing is quite problematic for me these days, but we'll get it there. So that'll be online as well. Next page, we talked about earned media, which is media when other people talk about Cannon Beach or promote Cannon Beach, or an article comes out or it comes online. We try to keep track of those. It's been a difficult project for our staff, being short-staffed. We hope to catch up and get those backed better as we move forward. And then it talks about the paid media, which is our efforts to actually market. Right now, without a campaign, we're still continuing with our 3 paid magazines that we advertise in, which are our partners in the DMO work. And then with our social media channels, we're keeping up on those as well. So that's really where our efforts stand currently. The top right corner, it shows you the budget and the Q1 and Q2 numbers. So that you can see where we stand financially. After watching your meeting, you guys had requested to see a line item budget. So I had our accounting print out a line item budget, which I included in this report for you. I'm happy to kind of go over those things, and I am, without being able to dive into details, I can certainly talk about all of them if you guys have questions about that. But in the report, I just want to make sure that everybody sees that the different categories are there, which in the June 17th presentation, I explained each category and what's involved in all. Then below that is the social media, kind of what we do for social media, the links to our various social outlets, Facebook, YouTube and Instagram are both listed there, as well as some data, which is a little hard to read because it's such fine print, but it is there. You can zoom in, or if you want bigger data, you can visit the dashboard, or I can always send it to you as well. But that really shows that we're still back on a curve, which is kind of our normal visitation pattern, at least on our website. Things are a little bit down right now. I feel like people are starting to travel further abroad, not so much drive market, which was driving a lot of our visitation during COVID and the pandemic, was people driving to the beach to enjoy that. And then the last page really just shows kind of the chamber information, our board of directors, the staff, and some of our membership data. And of course, our mission is listed on the bottom of that. So that's a quick overview of the report. The data points for the marketing DMO program are listed in that. And in the dashboard, I'm happy to go into as much detail as I can to explain those to you if you have any questions.
You have on your marketing, your budget, you have partnerships. Can you tell me what kind of partnerships and with whom you have them?
So there's 4 partnerships, basically. North Coast Partnership is the Seaside, Astoria, Warrenton Chambers of Commerce, along with Clatsop County, are partnering together to promote the North Coast, which we incorporate Clatsop County. So that's a good effort to do that. The next, we help promote the food trail, which is with Travel Tillamook. We're really promoting all the food places to stop and eat from Astoria down to Neskowin, and Cannon Beach was one of the first cities involved in that partnership going. We're also working on the beer trail, which is similar, but really just Clatsop County. That's a small portion of the partnership. And there's one more, which I'm forgetting at the moment, but I know there's one more partnership in there.
Jim,
Yes.
but I don't understand what the 17,000 is for in the partnerships. How do you pay to be in a partnership? Are you talking about like media to promote the food trail or?
Yes. That's precisely what it is, to maintain the membership, to put marketing materials out, to help people get to know that the food is a very important part of what we have on the coast and a very desirable thing to come and visit and enjoy while you're here.
So,
Each of the partners puts in a portion of money.
oh, okay.
It's not,
Because I'm being new, I don't know that much about the chamber. So I'm going to ask a couple questions that might seem really dumb, but
and as always, I say, if you guys have questions or want
okay.
to really go into this, my door's open.
They're just sort of general
Yeah.
questions. So your members don't pay, none of the members pay any kind of dues or anything?
Our members, all of our members pay.
Oh, they do pay dues. Okay, because I didn't see that.
So this is the DMO budget for the Destination Managing Organization budget that we contract with the city for. This does not include the
Okay, all right, I got it. And I wondered who owns the chamber building?
we own the building.
Oh, you own the building. So I was noticing there's no line item in here for maintenance, really.
That's the chamber side of our.
That's in the chamber. Okay, that explains it. I was just wondering. And then when you say equipment rental, number 6175,
Mhm.
what is that?
We have a contract for the copier, which the visitor center uses to make copies of map, lots of information that we share with visitors on a daily basis.
Okay, and
That's part of the lease of that.
all right, and then I see under what I guess I don't get is I know that you explained what earned media is, and paid media is the marketing, is the magazine placement. So then when it says marketing services, which is one of the biggest line items, or a fairly large one, that doesn't include the earned media and the paid media. So what does that include?
So marketing services, will be paying for the marketing company to help us build that campaign. So they're providing us a service to build that campaign. It's not the actual payment that goes, or the ad that goes into the magazine. It's the creation of those campaigns, the creation of those materials that will then be used
Okay.
to do the marketing.
So it's the paying the people to do it, to do the service. Okay. And then on IT, again, is this, you must have a maintenance for that as well, and that would be in the other budget too.
Yeah, there's both sides of that budget. We have an IT company that is really helping us overhaul our entire system because our server was over 12 years old and he was amazed that it was still functioning, let alone being an appropriate tool for the chamber. So we're really redoing our system to update the server, have better IT protection, and then creating the workflow for all of those. Because when we switched through COVID to working partly remote and partly in the office, we realized we need to have access to both, which was very difficult to set up during COVID, and we realized we needed to get that done. So that's one of the things that we're doing.
Can I tag on
And-
your question? I'm just curious. Since it doesn't show the chamber budget on some of these things, and you were talking about maintenance and IT, is a portion of that not part of the visitor center or that contract, or,
Those are shared expenses. Now,
but they don't show up on
those are,
the shared portion doesn't show up here, or?
that falls into the administrative category that I had in the previous budget that I presented in June.
That's one of my questions.
Yeah, so I didn't see that. And
And
And-
anytime there's a shared expense between the chamber and the DMO, that falls into the administrative category. And the only thing that shows up in this report is the DMO side of that.
okay, and so liability insurance, because you have employees. So all your insurance would show up in the other budget,
Correct.
but you do have, I assume you do have it. I didn't,
It's in here too, yes.
okay,
And I guess some of that would be shared too, logically.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
okay.
Um, And the one additional thing I would add to this is we did receive a grant from Travel Oregon. They offered up a capacity grant, so that allowed us to move forward with a marketing manager. We put out the word for that. The application process closes on the 15th. We have some applicants already for that, so I hope to be moving forward with hiring that position and getting back to staff. So we still are trying to get back up to staff from where we were pre-COVID, and the marketing person is going to be very helpful in running this program for us.
Okay.
You have payroll expenses for the DMO, it looks like for 140,000, almost 141,000. Is that strictly just for the DMO or is that,
That's the DMO portion.
so and then you have 100 and for administrative, you have for the budget for the full year, 88,000. So that's in addition to the 140,000. So can you tell me what goes into the administrative is this for the visitor center?
A lot of it's for the visitors. Center,
Okay.
yes, but it's the full program together. So it would be both programs, the visitor center, the destination marketing as well.
Okay, so the administrative is 88,000. How does that compare to the 140,000? What's an administrative that's not in payroll?
Everything that's not payroll.
So that would be,
Exactly. I can.
and what would that be?
Give you a full breakdown on the next report if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I kind of like to see a little more detail.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes, I think another
Yeah.
level of detail. I mean, just visitor center. I think there's a lot of things in that budget and clearly a lot of things in administrative. So just another layer of detail. I don't think we have to get down to each magazine you're advertising in, but
I can get as detailed as you want. So
actually,
totally doable.
magazines he's advertising in would be good. A media
You're
breakdown
interested in
would
that?
be good. I think. Just so we know where we're coming from.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you. I'm curious to see that too, and especially being someone who knows so little about it. I could really use that.
Mhm.
It would be nice to have visitor center expenses here and DMO expenses here, if you can do that, if your budget allows you to do that, so that we know what it is that the city is funding.
Yeah, I can do that.
So to clarify, you want to see the budget and the P and L statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
is that part of what's been the annual report or is this all new? A more detailed,
It's all there. I didn't go that deep before. That wasn't requested, but I've said this to Barb, we can go as deep as you guys want to dive into that.
I think it would save a lot of these questions.
Sure, sure.
Is the council okay with waiting till the next quarter or do you want it sooner than that?
I kind of like to see it a little bit sooner than the next quarter. Again, I don't know what your schedule is and your calendar is probably as bad as our calendar, but
Well, I would say it's probably easier for me to get it to you before the next quarter, as next quarter is basically gonna be June, and that's Sandcastle, so I can probably get that to you in a month or
That would
in
be,
May.
that would be great.
Sounds
That'd be
good.
great.
We'll have it on the agenda for the May work session.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay with that?
I've got a couple of things. It looks like you've already spent 88% of the annual budget on digital.
Yep.
Can you,
Our website's a major digital component to all of that, and that is paid right up front at the beginning of the year. So we pay that ahead. It's not monthly. We pay for the year in advance.
so that's all website?
Yes. And other services we pay as we go. So
And you mentioned that you have two positions to fill, but one of them's going to be funded or partially funded by Travel Oregon, a marketing person. So is that reflected in the budget?
it is not, because that money's coming from Travel Oregon that would be used for this year. But it will be in the budget for next year.
Okay, because I noticed that you've already spent 74% of your annual admin budget in the first two quarters. Is there a reason for that one?
Without diving into the details, I can't give you the definitive answer, but I'll certainly have it at the next meeting.
Is there any carryover of funds year to year? And where are they reflected and what decisions are made on how to use that?
When we talk about carry forward funds, it's typically a board decision. Of course, the marketing committee will make a recommendation for that. Those funds don't show up in this annual report. But I can provide that on the next one too. That is, it's all the DMO funds are in their own account at their own bank. Actually, so they're not commingled like they were many years ago before this contract was put into place. So I can provide that balance sheet, I guess, would be the proper form for that.
Yeah, I think we should know what's there and what the plan is for that. Otherwise, it's kind of not in this plan anywhere. If more money comes in than what you've budgeted, because I believe you just get the full 70% of 1% by the contract, how is that money allocated?
So again, that comes to at the year end, we have a board, we'll go review that with the board and they'll see how much that is. And the last time we decided how much went into reserve or how much was carried forward. So that money is earmarked specifically for the DMO program, and that's what it stays for.
When does your fiscal year end?
Ours is the same as the cities.
Okay.
It's July through June.
Can I ask a question about the app? You got that up and running in June, is that correct?
Yeah, we got that. We launched that in June. We're continuing to build that out. The nice thing is it pulls from our website. So it pulls from the same data and information on our website to fill in the information. So we don't have to duplicate too much effort in creating that. But there are things that we can do through the app that aren't on the website, is track visitors and where their interests are. We can see if they create an itinerary, then us then outline where they go and what they want to see when they're visiting here. And if we get enough of that data and information, then we can then take, if you see a similar itinerary from all of our visitors, then we can create that itinerary and promote that itinerary.
The app was in last year's budget.
Yes.
You know what that cost?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can, that'll be the next step down in the detail.
So what does it do? It collects information from the website, but what does it do other than provide more information than is on the website?
Because it's tracking phone data and it's connecting to phone data. If someone is on their app and they go and they visit a location, then we know that they visited that location. So if they go to Sleepy Monk Coffee and they check in and they to Sleepy Monk Coffee, then we know they were there. And that then fills in some data in our information, which helps us to know what people are doing and what their interests are while they're here in town.
Do you have any information on how many times that's been downloaded or any usage data points on it?
Last time I checked, which was a little ago, we were almost at 500 downloads, which I'm not sure where that lands in the industry standard, but since we really only launched it last June, that's 8 months. I feel like that's a good start. But I had a meeting with our representative coming up soon, then I'll get more information on that.
It's somebody different than who does the website?
Same company.
Okay. Do any other Oregon Coast destinations have apps?
I haven't really looked at that. It's been a topic of discussion in DMO for us for quite some time. And we finally had the opportunity to do this and we wanted to take that chance because, it really puts that information right in the palm of your hand if you're a visitor or resident or really anybody who downloads the app. All that information is right in the palm of your hand. Most people are going to their phones for the information too. And the app is much more user-friendly and compatible with your phone than the website, even though the website does automate and translate for phone as well. So
Yeah, the only problem is you have to download it and then you have to use it. I know Seaside tried it for a while and I think they just gave up on theirs.
Seaside
Okay.
Chamber. The Seaside
City,
Chamber. Oh, city.
city marketing. Yeah,
Okay,
I think I've grilled Jim enough.
well done.
but I knew you would know the most.
I would have the most questions here.
Your turn.
Just one quick question, Jim. The slide that you showed the transient lodging tax.
Mhm.
And you also mentioned that the business seemed to be down. If my eyesight is right, at least through the current quarter that you have listed, it's still above, right?
Yep.
So what you're saying is that the transient lodging taxes, or at least the hotel guest stays, are going to be on track to be more and we're getting less day trippers?
I believe that's true.
Okay,
Mhm. Yeah, it seems to me that we're dropping back into more of a normal visitor pattern. Not so many, not necessarily day trippers, although they're definitely part of the drive traffic. People that will drive down here for the day and then go, those are day trippers. But also the people that would drive and stay overnight are drive traffic. So anywhere that can drive here in a day and spend the night and then drive home the next day or stay for the weekend. But it was really where we were kind of focusing our marketing efforts during the pandemic because that's where everybody was going. And mostly we were trying to tell them the beach is full, parks are full, clean up your mess. We were sharing all that pandemic information to try and help guide and drive their visitor behavior, I guess. Probably be the best way to say that, because we wanted good visitors to come and enjoy our community. And that was pretty much the same all up and down. We were all pretty well hit during the pandemic. So getting that information out was important. And now that drive traffic's slowed down a little bit, but we're still seeing the visitor stays come to the hotels. So.
all right, thank you.
So how will your message change and how will it change now that it's coming back to a more regular situation?
I encourage you to join us on the marketing committee to help us decide that. That's exactly what we're doing. So I really look forward to having that new direction based on the information that we got from the community, as well as the information, the feedback from our marketing committee. So we're really trying to incorporate everybody into that program. And that's one of the things that we love about Verde Media is they really got it. They understood our community and understood all the different aspects of it. It's not just get heads in beds. It's, you know, take care of Cannon Beach because it's a special place.
Yeah, I'd really like to see the visitors center and the separated in a lot more detail in both budgets.
You can do that. Right?
Okay, any other questions?
Thanks.
Jim.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Jim.
We'll be typing in no time.
No, I got to go back to work now and get ready for tomorrow morning's board meeting. Thank you very much.
Have fun, thanks.
More fun than our budget meeting tomorrow.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have the presentation of the facility program, preliminary budget and siting options for the police station and city hall. Like to start, Bruce?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to do some introductions. We have Jennifer Beatty from, she's the principal of FIDA. We have Leslie Jones, who's our project architect, and Curtis Gagner. Gagner, okay, all right. And he's the structural engineer. And also we have Jordan Fell from Emmerich, who is our CMGC. So we appreciate you folks coming over. And I just want to read a statement. Over 20 years ago, the city recognized the need to construct a new city hall and police station. No action was taken at that time, and as a result, the project costs increased from, there was $4 million at that point. No action was taken, and the cost increased from between 16 and 18 million in late 2018. Again, we did not move forward, and in 2023, it's risen up to 22 to 25 million. The current city hall design process started with a series of community outreach events, similar to what was conducted in Cannon Beach Elementary School renovation project in the last half of 2022. Leslie Jones of CETA Architecture will go over the results of that effort in a bit more depth in a few moments. But what came out were elements of providing a safe, state-of-the-art facility from which staff could perform at a high level in the case of a seismic event. And I want to remind everybody that we are located on the Ring of Fire, which was responsible for 90% of the world's earthquakes. And it would be a facility that could enhance the Midtown experience and provide a high-tech / touch environment where city business can be conducted with easier access for our residents. That's what people talked about. Today is the first step in how do we make it happen? And what's different now? We finally have budget figures based on the facility program information, which identifies the space requirements starting with the individual, then the department, then the entire building. They're rough figures because we're early on and hopefully lean towards the conservative side. They will be refined as the project moves forward. We're reaching the point where we all need to get serious about deciding if this is a project the city is willing to construct and support. With that, I turn the presentation over to our project architect, Leslie Jones.
Thank you, Bruce. So first of all, thank you for meeting and taking the time and putting us on your agenda so that we can present this evening. As Bruce mentioned, the community outreach process that we undertook, I believe last time we were here, I went over that in quite a bit of detail. So I think everyone is familiar with the community outreach events that we held here and the input that we got. Bruce mentioned a couple things in particular that we heard at those events. One being the openness, the transparency and welcoming nature of a future facility. The second item that we heard loud and clear during those events was the priority for safety, particularly as it relates to a potential tsunami event on this site. When we last spoke, we spoke about that as well, the tsunami risk and the risk particular to this Gower Street site. So I wanted to provide an update to that and some research that we have been doing and what our current understanding of that is. And that will then lead into some site options. So on our agenda here, introductory comments from Bruce, the project history, which Bruce also discussed, and the things that we talked about last time. So in terms of tsunami, once we will discuss that, and then the size of the building, as Bruce said, the programming efforts, and that will lead into a couple different site options. So to back up to the tsunami risk here at this site. A couple of years ago, in 2021, there were some legislative decisions made about regulations in regard to construction in a tsunami inundation zone, which we are in, and that limits what we are allowed to build at the Gower Street site. We reached out to several people, including some representatives at the state level in the building code department. And even at that level, some of the answers that we were getting were inconclusive because this is new regulations. There's not been the time period to establish what those means exactly. So our current understanding is that it could be a path to build a category for emergency facility here, but it is not currently recommended by anyone we have talked to. So in the reading of the code as it currently stands, the path is preferred to build outside of the tsunami inundation zone if possible. I don't know if Curtis, you want to elaborate on that piece.
Basically, in order for it to meet the state code for emergency responses after tsunami, we have to design the portion that houses that emergency response to stay out of the water and for the building below that level to be able to withstand the tsunami, which would force us to go to basically to a 3-story building to get it high enough, and also drive how the program could be located within the building itself, which is a fairly significant undertaking in this site. Not only do we have the tsunami, but we also do not have great soils here, so it's very deep concrete piles to support that multi-story building.
Chris, I have a question. You said a 3-story building. Is the first floor the height of a 3-story building plus the building? Or could we build 1 story up and then 2 other stories?
You would get all 3 floors, but the lower floors would get inundated.
Maybe sacrificial.
Right, but to stay out of it, if it was the police station alone, we would build all the way up 30 feet, first floor.
The only parts of the program that are required to be outside of an inundation zone are those pieces of program that are required after an emergency.
Right.
So in this case, it may only be the Emergency Operations Center. It's not currently interpreted to be the entire police department, but only those elements of it that are considered essential after an emergency.
Okay, and my point was, just as I understood it, is that this would be a very tall building compared to what our standard is here. And in fact, the first floor might be close to what our top of the roof is. So it's many, many stories.
It would be 3 stories total, but the program on the lower levels would be what you'd not expect to be needed directly after tsunami.
Okay, all right.
Is there any city that built a facility like this with the new codes?
Not City Hall, but there is a facility that built something similar with an evacuation center on the roof, which is not what we're proposing here, to be clear, but there is a city further down the coast that built something under the new code.
What city was that? Do you know?
It's the Hatfield Marine Center down in,
The what?
it's the Hatfield.
Oh, okay.
That's several years ago, isn't it?
But they built,
They built a huge ramp to get up to the roof because there's nowhere for them to run from that area. So they intentionally built the roof to be an evacuation center.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if Bruce got his answer about these stories. You're talking about a total 3 stories with the first story being ground level, but it may be a parking. And then there's 2 stories on top of it.
Yes.
that's a scenario that could be represented. It would be, we don't have the exact number because you have to have a site specific report done for the tsunami inundation here, but you're like 26.5 feet. That 3rd floor would have to start at 26.5 feet. And then go up from there, like the ceiling and the roof would be above that.
So about 40 feet total is gonna be the minimum.
And problematic, and where the answers from the state were not inclusive in addition was exactly what pieces needed to be on that floor if we were to try to do that. And if operations generator would have to be up there, how would you get up there, how you would, what kind of stairs would need to be required to be able to access that point. There was a lot of the state is still determining a lot of things. So we reached out into the community beyond the state. So the state had a advisory board. Curtis had calls with multiple people on those advisory boards, trying to understand what they meant when they did this legislative piece and how to try to interpret it. I don't know if you want to, that's at all.
Basically, you've first got the concern of what you're using for the emergency responses doesn't get destroyed during the tsunami, but then you also have how do you access it after the tsunami? Because the tsunami is not just a clean event where the water rises, leaves. It comes in and pushes debris and stuff around. So you also have to have a plan for getting into that facility afterwards and being able to function from it. So it makes it a bit of a challenge to have it in a spot where we get water this high.
And didn't you say that was not recommended?
Currently, the experts that we have been talking to from the state level, the state building codes, and then the people that were on the committee that helped initiate this piece with the state, feel that that's not the recommended path.
Yeah, we were also looking for other options and paths to not build so high because it is so out of character with the community.
And I'm sorry, I asked a question that got us pretty far astray. So please get back to your presentation.
And did you just say that it's the emergency operations center that needs to be that, but the police department necessarily?
So if the police,
That-
if they have a holding cell, that would have, there's pieces of them that would have to be. So then we would have to dissect the police department and determine what would need to be above and what could be sacrificial.
Okay.
So to get,
That's
yeah,
Go ahead.
big and unclear.
Yep,
Sure.
yes. So to get back to the agenda, as
Thank you.
mentioned here, concurrent to this research that we have been doing, we've also been doing comprehensive building programming and sizing requirements so that we fully understand what we need to build, what the community and the city needs. So I have those numbers on the slide here to review. There is project history here too. This had been completed previously by SRG, and so those numbers are here for reference, as are the existing numbers and areas here on the right for reference. I will note all of these numbers here are net area numbers. And that means they are just the individual program pieces, the usable space. So the area inside the walls of an office, for example, but not the area of the walls themselves, of the hallways, of the paths in between. So what you're looking at here I said, those net numbers. The first one is the shared spaces and the building amenities. So here we're looking at a new council chambers, which would double as the emergency occupations center. Conference rooms. We've included, in addition to the council chambers, a small conference room and a medium conference room, which is one additional conference room to what is currently available in this city hall. Other building amenities, break rooms, restrooms, a central copy, print, work area, the back of house building support functions. And in the number, we also included one flexible workstation for future growth of the city. And that one workstation that's independent of any particular department for to allow some flexibility in growth.
Leslie, do you want us to hold our questions or ask them as they come?
You can ask questions as they come.
So the 2,836 existing net area,
Hmm.
you took this building and you did the council chambers, the conference room, the break room, the bathrooms.
No, we did not. So the existing net area, those also come from the SRG report that was done previously. We did not come back and field measure this facility. We took the SRG numbers and used them, assuming that they,
Okay, and I was part of that.
yes.
That blue ribbon or whatever we called ourselves. And I think that
Yes,
that's,
so those numbers are
Is what-
directly from their report. We did not recreate them. So the finance department that we're showing a moderate growth from what was originally forecast. It does include an extra workstation there for growth. They currently have 5 employees, and we were hearing a need for one additional potential employee there. HRAP, these numbers, there are a lot more employees in HRAP, but a lot of them are outside, and so we aren't providing workstations for everybody. We've proposed here 6 workstations. That's 3 for full-time employees that currently work for HRAP. 1 as a flexible drop-in desk, 1 for future growth, and 1 for a summer intern, for a total of 6 workstations. That number, the HRAF number, actually went down from what was previously calculated for their need. What we heard from HRAP now is more of a desire for an open office format, so we were able to consolidate a little bit there. Public Works and Community Development, there was some growth here. Those 2 departments, we heard feedback from them that they often work together, hold lots of meetings together. So we looked at these 2 spaces as a unit and allowed for 1 additional office here for growth. It would likely be in community development.
so the current employees in Public Works, that's just the people that work.
The office employees, not everyone else. So Public Works is another department that has a lot of foot traffic, similar to HRAP, that's not represented here. The executive department, we allowed 1 additional workstation there as well. There's currently 2 employees there, and we discussed a potential open office format cubicle for growth in the executive department. Emergency management, this is something new that was added since the previous study. So currently 1 employee, but we've included space for one additional position there. IT is 1 employee, and Hopefully he doesn't go anywhere, as we all rely on him. It does include the IT room and some storage space and a work bench or workstation. Farmers market, similarly, there's one employee. While we don't have an additional employee workstation allocated to that department, it would be co-located with that general city hall growth workstation.
That workstation is currently shared with the building official. So neither one of them had their own, really.
The police department, I believe currently is 12 employees. We're providing a few extra workstations there for some of the summer growth in people. So the lifeguards and the bike program. There's also in the police department program one additional office for a future potential detective. So the net program total, that is, again, the net, so only the usable area. The load factor, which is shown next there, we have applied 32% to the net area to get our load factor. We met with the department heads. We met with each department head individually first, and then heard what they needed, how they work, what their employee count is currently and anticipated in the future. And then we did sample space plans of what we heard so that they could see those plans and give us, through that exercise of meeting with them a second time, looking at potential plans, we were able to come up with that 32% load factor as being a reasonable number to get from the net program to the total. So that's including all of the circulation, all of the walls. That is the overall building size. We will be looking at a couple different options. One of the options we'll be looking at is potentially a 2-story option. So that's what you see there in the vertical circulation. If
Just saying, Leslie, does anybody have any questions just straight on the program numbers? Because that's important. It drives the size of the building, drives the dollars.
I guess I'm curious what the formula is that you use. Is it per workstation? And is there
So it's not per workstation. Typically, we see about a 30% as an industry standard formula there. So it's all private offices, all cubicle workstations, all conference rooms, everything that I mentioned, both in the shared building components and in departments. All of those come together in the net. And then in these initial stages, we apply a percentage to that to go from net to gross. In this case, we went a step further and actually looked at space plans of what we heard and presented those back to the department heads as something that would be workable. Of course, we don't have confirmation of the building shape, potentially building site. And so we were just looking at concept workflows. And from there, doing the math backwards, came to a 32% increase to go from those net areas to the gross.
I've seen anywhere between, the 30 to 40, depending on how abundant space might be. So, you'd often see, so what the space plans they were able to do is kind of define, okay, we're at the low end here at the 32, and we're going to use that because that seems to be everybody's buying into that kind of relationship works.
That's what we're have dealt with in my experience. If you have a building that you want to have more grand entrances, places like that, it's going to be higher. But if it's just an efficient office building, it's going to be in the 30 to 35% range.
So what struck me here is if you look at the numbers that were done previously, we varied in what we included in net. We independently confirmed the load factor. And yet our building total, when you move to gross, is nearly identical. So for us, this was confirmation of that previous report and the good work they did, and us confirming with each department, again, what they need, and that number does represent the true need of the city.
And Bruce, since the SRG report was done, how many staff members have we added?
I believe it was 4.
What do you do in a case like was mentioned, the building official doesn't seem to have a place there? So do you add more space for that, or?
So
There's 2 spaces counted. Right now, it's 1 space, 2 people, but there's 1 each department give a space.
Okay,
We're not gonna replicate. We have, because it's,
but you mentioned farmer's market and is sharing space with the building official, and there's only 1 work space for that particular position. So is that the way it's going to continue then? The building official won't have any.
what will happen is that it'd be the farmer's market, we'll have workstation, and can you pull down
I mean,
yes,
whoever's
oh,
farmer's market, and then go to community development?
so in community development specifically,
They would work out of the community development.
Yes.
Okay,
So they would have a separate work.
okay.
the building official would, yes, that was a position accounted for in community development.
So one of the things I was just confirming that I understood correctly is that when the reason that we're not growing so much, that we're gaining employees, is that we were able to find efficiency in the size of the spaces that were defined. So the offices may not be quite as abundant as they might have been, or might, they're very appropriate for this type of use. And so that's one of the things you're seeing, efficiency in confirmation of the report size, or the reporting size, but not growth in it, because we're able to fit more people into those spaces.
One of the first things we did is determined building standards. So the standard size for a typical office, these numbers are based on a standard office size of 10 foot by 12 foot. And that would be the size of all the offices, with the exception of the director's office in each department was a 10 by 14 standard. So slightly bigger for more meeting space. Something similar we did with the cubicle sizes. We've seen over the years cubicle sizes reducing. So our building standard there is a 6 by 6 cubicle space. In some instances there, we had some flexibility to go to a 6 by 8. But by limiting those choices, we provide for more building flexibility in the future and is more egalitarian.
Can I just ask you a favor? Is that a microphone on the desk there?
Well, no, it is.
It won't amplify any.
Yeah.
It won't.
What happens is this,
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Yeah.
I
you're gonna have to speak up.
Jennifer up a little bit especially. Sorry.
Oh, I suck at this.
gonna have to give you a little,
I know.
Figure something out for this room that the microphones pick up and it gets louder in this room, because there's no amplification here. This is only for the TV.
People,
Thanks for saying
and we
that.
can't use other microphones because they fight against
Yeah.
the give feedback.
We will try to speak louder and project.
Really? I really can't.
Yeah.
thank you for telling us. We will strive to be better.
I mentioned it to Justin, last night. Yeah.
Any other questions before we move on from the overall building size? Again, we approached this exercise with an eye to efficiency. We knew we wanted the building to be as efficient as we could make it while still providing needed services. So our total number here again is right found the same as the previous SRG numbers, with hopefully including some of that growth.
So the deficiencies in the police department right now, in terms of evidence and a holding cell and all of that, those have all been addressed.
Yes.
So the police department process was a little bit different than the other departments. We met with the department and gathered their information about their workflows, about their staff and processes. And then we went and toured 3 different stations to see how it was done, how evidence processing worked in those places, to see what ideas were applicable, which were maybe not or oversized. So then with that information, we looked one more time at the program to determine what was needed, where we would put targeted growth, and used that to confirm our square footage for the police department.
And the police department, you went to see similar size of staff?
Yes,
Okay.
we did. One was really quite comparable. It was about a 4,000 square foot standalone police department. The others were larger, and so they took a different view to see what was applicable and what was just oversized.
And they used a police station specialist and programmer so that they knew, because there's so many processes that they use, we want to make sure we were set up properly for them. Here, it's a hodgepodge.
Yes, so
Really liked the smaller one that we saw. It was really well laid out and actually what we had talked about before we even saw it.
Okay,
was perfect.
so you went along on the tour?
What's that?
You went with?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Lieutenant and the evidence tech, and Valerie, had gone up as well. And so that was
Good.
yeah,
really good fit. And we decided that we're gonna start commuting from there. So it's gonna be.
Let me tell you where he's going with this. It's going back to the Black Hawk that he wants.
Yeah. I was just,
I knew that we hired a person that was a Black Hawk mechanic. We hired another person that I thought was a Black Hawk mechanic, but he's a Black Hawk mechanic and pilot. So Jason can make.
We're this close. Wait till you see budget this year.
so we did cut the Black Hawk square footage out of this, but evidence processing is its own security part.
Yeah.
Anything else on the building size before we move
The
forward?
only thing I would say is you're seeing a rolled up version. So she has every room, every piece defined, right? So you're seeing the resulting evidence of that.
About the police station, will the square footage change if it's built as a 1 or 2 story structure?
Yes, somewhat. There would be some added square footage if it becomes 2 stories. In terms of stairs, potential elevator. One of the facilities we toured, we chose specifically because it was a 2-story option to see what was on the ground floor, what was above and how they made that. So we did look at a facility like that.
Is it significant?
I would say it would not be significant.
Thank you.
They didn't like it, the department being 2 stories, and we didn't either, just because they said the flow wasn't good for, going out and talking to people, and they had separated it where the chief and his lieutenant sergeant were upstairs and the officers were downstairs, and there was a big separation, a gap on the flow of how it worked.
They went that direction because it's an extremely confined site.
and then you have to have an elevator for ADA.
Yeah.
There's no questions. I think we can Jordan talk about the cost of the project.
Well, I want to talk about our two site options. So again,
I apologize.
I'm going to go back to our consideration of what we learned for the community outreach event in conjunction with now our understanding of the size. So in acknowledgement that many sites were looked at previously and evaluated, we don't want to rehash all of that. The Gower Street site was selected. That said, we're going to talk about another potential site that is outside of the tsunami inundation zone. So we were able to look at a site that is above the XXL tsunami line. What you're seeing here is that's represented in the yellow line. So everything higher to the right of that line is outside of the inundation zone if you are to build at ground level. So previously, the Southwind site was reviewed as a potential. That's dashed in here, but is not, yep, exactly. That site had some challenges in terms of landslides and instability in the soil and some larger infrastructure challenges. The site we then looked at is the Tulluvania cache site. It's a much smaller site. But the first thing we looked at is what about the scenario if we just move the police department there to have an emergency center that is outside of that inundation zone? The site that the cache building and facilities currently sits on, it's already graded, has access from the highway and potentially could accommodate that. So one of the options we're going to present is the police station separated on this smaller site and the city hall remaining on this site at Gower Street. In addition to the safety concerns, we heard the community concern for wanting a welcoming, accessible city hall, and Gower Street offers that. It offers a site that is in the heart of the community that is easily accessed. And so we heard that as important. So we're going to present two prices, two overall costs. One is for this scenario where we're building two buildings, one here, one at the Tulluvania cache site. The second option that we priced was if we move both functions to the Tulluvania cache site. So that site, we believe, is large enough to accommodate both functions if it is 2 stories. So it could accommodate the police station as a standalone building, one story structure, probably between about 4,000 and 5,000 square feet, or a single structure that is larger, about between 15 and 1,600 square feet. 1,000 square feet, thank you.
Yes.
That would accommodate both the city hall and the police station.
Standalone police station concept would have emergency operations there.
Yes, in the standalone police station concept, emergency operations would be housed in that police department, and it would be laid out for that.
And nothing would be here in terms.
Here would be the city hall.
No, I mean, in terms of the emergency operations.
We would have this space right now is.
Have this.
I know. Yep.
It's all here.
I
It would be
know.
the same thing. We would have a duplicate here.
Duplicate here.
That would be.
Primary. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
When we look at the pricing, also to clarify, with the scenario that the police department and emergency center is outside of the inundation zone, the structure here would be similar to this now at grade. The 1 story at grade facility, not built up over parking or that 3-story option we were talking about.
And it wouldn't be a category 4.
It would be designed to resist to category 4 construction in regards to earthquake and seismic. But if the tsunami water level gets here, it would not resist that. So as long as the major earthquake didn't trigger the massive tsunami, the building on this site would still be functional. But if the tsunami comes in, then everything would have to run out of the other site because this site would not be usable.
And does it have to be built to category 4 seismic on this location?
It doesn't, if we don't have the emergency management portion, it does not have to be. But the incremental upcharge between a category 2 building and a category 4 building is not all that significant in a 1-story structure.
Also, we want this to be seismically, because this is a preferable location from which to operate. And category 2 means we'll get out of it. So,
So as we continue to ponder this and the reason we've moved to this is because we felt that from the fact that we'd have to be so tall here and that it would be cost prohibitive to start to do that and outside of character. That's why we're looking at this as an alternate option. In addition, thought could be given to if they both were to move, then what happens on the site and envisioning the site for what you want in this area too. So there's kind of a lot of play. We haven't played with what could happen here if it isn't the city hall, but it is something that has to be forecasted.
A kiosk directing everybody where to go.
big kiosk.
You mentioned the combined site at Southwind, and it would need to be a 2-story structure. How would you envision that working? The police department being on the ground floor with City Hall above it, or something different than that?
You want,
I
the police station on the first floor.
would envision, yes, the police station on the ground floor. The city hall may occupy a portion of that ground floor and some of the upper floor.
Okay. All right.
So as we move into the costing, just understand, I know you guys saw costing yesterday at a schematic level. This is taking a step back. We're still at the programming level. So this is more of a estimation of what the project might look like. So I want to make sure that we're not kind of an apple to apple from yesterday.
All right. So like she said, this is what we call a conceptual or PD budget, programming budget. We don't have lines on paper. We have square footages and assumptions that we're making. So what I'd like to do is kind of walk through, on the left there is what we're calling option 1. So that is splitting City Hall here at the Gower site, call it 10,000 square feet, and then 5,000 square feet of PD at the cache site. Got it broken down into categories. I'd like to jump back to those after I go through both of these. What we do with these conceptual budgets is it gives us a rough order of magnitude of both scenarios of what we're looking at, right? So when we look at option 2 on the right, this is putting both pieces of programming at the cache site. So 10,000 square feet of City Hall, 5,000 square feet of PD in a 2-story structure at the cache site. So you can see that there's roughly a $2 million delta there between those two pieces. And so you may ask, square footage is the same. Why is there a 2 million between the two sites or the two different scenarios? So the first item there, you'll see a big delta in selective demolition. And the reason for that is when we're building option 1, we have to assume that we're tearing down this site because we're tearing down this building because we're building a new building in its place. The other big cost associated with that is the temporary facilities. We need to get you out of here and somewhere else, whether that's in modulars, out in the parking lot or someplace else, but we have to get you out of here. When you look at the costs at option 2, just building everything at the cache site, you guys maintain operations here. We're off doing our thing up the hill. Building's done, you guys come over, and then whatever happens with this site happens. So that's a pretty significant cost. The building construction costs are pretty similar in that sense. The utility upgrades are a little interesting. When we did this analysis, you'll see that they're call them very close in cost, but The majority of the cost is at the cache site because we have to get utilities to that site for all the programming. You already have utilities here, so you can see there's maybe $150,000 delta there. What that tells you is $800,000 is designated for utilities up at cache, $150,000 is designated here, because again, you already have the utilities here. Site development is an interesting one. So when you're building on two different sites, you're building two sets of parking lots, two sets of, landscaping is a separate line item, but you're having to do landscaping at two different sites. You're having to do site lighting. We're having to do ground improvements. So that's piers and grade beams at both sites. So that's 15,000 total square feet of ground improvements that we're having to do versus at the cache site, the square footage there is half of that. And so it's more economical to do it that way. We're inflating both numbers for assumption of construction period starting 12 months from now. Our inflation numbers are conservative here, I will say that, but I do in general want to say that because of this conceptual budget, we've got a 10% contingency, what we call design contingency for things that we don't know what we don't know at this point. So handling those, and then we're also carrying a 5% construction contingency, which is our intent is always that we carry that forward to the start of construction, and then that bucket is used for unknowns, scope adds, things like that during construction. So it's a conservative estimate, but it's a realistic conceptual estimate. And I think it paints the picture as far as what the most economical option is as far as building.
On the second option, where does ODOT?
So that's a good point. The second option does trigger an ODOT piece. It's unknown at this point, but we have about $300,000 premium to handle the ODOT piece on option 2.
Where is the cost of the temporary workplace for option 1?
It's in our selective demolition piece. So that's where we've carried. I had to break these out a little different than the way we had them broken out the first in our original estimate, but the temporary costs are in the selective demolition.
So $750,000 basically.
Yes. Yeah, it was a little bit less than that, but yes.
Am I reading this right, that the single building at the cache site, 9 million, does this include the infrastructure to withstand the sliding situation, landslides?
Yes, it does. That's a piece, as we're exploring the site, it's an unknown. We anticipate that there will be a piece that has to deal with that. So we have dollars in there to associated with that. Yes.
As we have been told that it's going to cost so much to deal with the landslides that it would almost double the cost of construction.
I can speak to that a little bit. We looked at the report from the Southwind site where most of those studies were done, and the geotech information is on that Southwind site. That the proposed development there, I believe, encompassed a much larger development than just the city hall and police. So a much larger square footage area and higher up on the site. So some of those costs were associated with being up on the hill, getting a road that was sound to that higher site, which would also need to be stabilized. So that one of the attractions of the cache site is it's lower near the highway, and so it mitigates some of that. That being said, we will need a new geotechnical report for the cache site. So we've engaged our civil consultant. They've started having new conversations with ODOT to fully understand the ODOT triggers and to have a new geotech report done. Our geotechnical consultant has said they want to get back out to the site first. They placed sensors to measure the movement of the ground out there. I believe the closest one to the cache site was placed right at the edge between Southwind and cache at the road. So they will be going back out there to look at the movement closer to cache in particular. And then we could work from there to get an updated geotechnical report.
So this is 16.9 with some inclusion for landslides, but it could be more if you find that there is a much more of a potential for landslides in that area.
True, and that's one of the reasons that we had that 10% contingency built in, plus the 5% construction contingency to cover that. But there is an inclusion for some level of mitigation of the landslides included in this estimate.
And the assumptions we used for that, for what we included, were based loosely on what the Southwind site recommendations were. And those were one of the worst spots on the Southwind side as far as landslide. The layer of soil that we're dealing with on the cache site is shallower, the layer of bad soil. So we're a little bit optimistic that getting an updated soils report and boring specifically for that site will actually reduce some of the recommendations that were in the Southwind's report.
This is relatively flat, and the Southwind site where they were looking at was all ravines and things like that. Now all that had to be mitigated.
So the ODOT requirements are going to be different if there's just a police station there.
Correct. From my understanding from the preliminary report that we received, there was not going to be an ODOT requirement if the PD was just there based on the loading.
Okay.
But it would be required if the city hall is put there as well.
If both pieces of program were put up at the cache site, yes, we would require ODOT improvements.
But do we know if it would be to the same degree when we were, is when we were putting a school and housing?
So there,
Things
I
up.
don't know that.
in,
Okay.
on the cache site, there is an existing curb cut and drive aisle to get onto
Yeah.
the site, which didn't exist in the Southwind location.
The cache site has the helipad area, is that correct?
There's many helipads in the city.
Yes, there is one, but there's actually one right up the hill too, because it's up there for the logging and everything that's going on. There's
Okay, there's one farther to the east.
just up the hill. Yeah.
Okay,
I thought you were asking for his Blackhawk.
Oh, yeah.
my question was about,
I'd settle for two.
would any building plan move that? But if we have a backup, then it's probably not an issue.
I think when we look at the site, we're gonna have to look holistically at it. So for parking, because there's still grade on that, even though there's nice plateaus. We'll have to look at how we tier parking, how we put the building in, how it nestles in. All that, and revised geotech report will tell us the best location to place the building comparatively, so that may have a strategy into help reducing the amount of improvements by placing it in a place that has less of a slide prone area.
Does this estimate also include all the infrastructure, the sewer and the water and everything that needs to go in there?
Correct. And again, those are, I mean, we know that sewer and water and all those things have to get there and sanitary, but we're making our best guess and assumption of what those are going to look like at this point, at this conceptual phase. But yes, it does.
For both the police department as well as the city hall and police department.
Correct. Another point that I did want to point out was that by putting both program at one site, you're being more efficient with your space. You don't have two fire riser rooms. You don't have two IT closets. All of those programs you're using, one mechanical system for both purposes. So there's economies there as well.
There's something else too that kind of balances the other way. And that's that if you put both up there, you have a site that you can sell or use and repurpose or something. So
That's another discussion.
yeah, no, it absolutely is. But I mean, it is possible to offset some costs on that too. And we have old estimates of what it could be sold for.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it was more expensive if the building was gone.
There's one last piece and then I'll be done talking about the dollars. But there is another cost associated with splitting the two programs at two different sites, and that's the function of time and phasing. Having you be able to operate here without us around wherever that may be is see what having the site all to ourselves has a benefit, right? So we're not in your way. You guys are able to operate. We don't have to move you out of one place, build it, move you back into another. Those are a function of time and dollars as well. So sorry, I lost my train of thought there real quick, but.
So what Jordan has been talking about so far, the 19 1,016,000 up there. Those are for hard costs. So hard costs being the cost to construct the building and the parking and the site. The other costs up there are soft costs. Those are additional costs associated with the project. So because we are at early stages and just finishing up pre-design, we've listed out what we anticipate those costs to be, but applied a standard, industry standard percentage to the total of those we would anticipate.
To clarify a statement, she means that we listed the things that would need to have a cost associated with them, but and apply the industry standard, because we're not to the point where we can fill those numbers in yet. Yeah. That includes an additional owner contingency piece there. And extras, furniture and equipment.
For us.
Yeah.
An expensive couple days.
Last night's meeting.
Right? Next.
Any questions on anything with the budget?
Yes. It's not. I don't think it's a fair question, but the SRG estimate, at least in my opinion, had a fairly extensive contingency portion to it. Do you feel like your contingency portion of your estimate is more conservative than theirs was?
There's a couple of different contingencies built into this. So what you're seeing on the screen right now, the owner contingency, which would translate to approximately 5% of the hard costs, that is just for unforeseen items on the owner side as they relate specifically to soft costs. I'll let Jordan talk about the contingencies that are built, hard cost numbers in addition to that.
Okay,
Right, so in the hard cost numbers, we have approximately 20% contingency built in there right now. The way that those are broken out are a 10% design contingency, so just to get us conceptual level all the way to a contract document set of drawings, that's 10%. We have 5% in escalation just as a function of the time that it's going to take from when we bid and build this project. And then we have another 5% that's actually intended for the course of construction.
okay.
So it's 25% total roughly.
I think in addition to that, to answer maybe a question that you were potentially alluding to as well, when we look at the numbers, the inflation has not been kind on construction. And so when we were looking at the total budget numbers over the course of from 2018, 2019 to now, it's modeling about similar to what we're seeing in the increase.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jason, how do you feel about the idea of having the police department combined with the city hall? Would it work for you, or would you prefer having a building by itself? Yes.
No, I mean, it works out well here. I like the idea that we would share those things. Or some of the things where it would be more cost effective. I want whatever is gonna happen as fast as possible.
Anything can be better than what you've got now.
Yeah.
But with the city hall basically on top of the police station, is that a workable alternative for you?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen where we work now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we're sharing it now and I don't see that being an issue. We could find somewhere else to put the helicopter.
I will also add to that, as we worked through the programming, there was very little overlap in the end in terms of shared program between the police department and other elements of the city hall. So it made it it made it easier to separate them without adding too much additional square footage, apart from the things Jordan mentioned, like the IT room, mechanical room, fire riser room, those back of house building support services. But otherwise, the programs really developed separately.
It would be clearly separated. There's areas that City Hall staff isn't allowed to go into in the police department. And so it would be clearly separated, but you could have rooms that are adjoining, whether it's a conference room or entryways, that type of thing.
You know, like you said, this is what we have now.
Rick, to weigh in.
Yeah, but now you're side by side. I'm thinking being on top, there's a different feeling there. And I'm thinking of, prisoners coming in and out and so forth, being able to deal with.
I think that's a better way of doing it with us on the bottom than having to bring them through City Hall.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
And if I could add, I think the way Leslie was talking about, there would be some city hall space on the first floor and then all of the police station, and then above that, the remaining city hall. So what can happen is really two entrances that are, work independently, but there can be some shared like conference room and that kind of space. You can create a visual image on the outside that identifies where people should be going.
Bruce, could we ask Rick or Karen if they have any?
Yeah, Rick, do you have pluses and minuses on the two options
Because
that come to mind?
would his office would be? If they were separate, where would his office be?
I would imagine it would be in the city hall part, but it's really hard to say who would be where at this point. We don't even have a footprint.
Okay, but that wasn't the only.
But I don't think that, well, I mean, Rick can speak for himself, but I don't think that his location is necessarily ideal where it is. It was
Oh, I
just
know.
happenstance. And so I think that most of his work, he probably works more with Rusty than he does with the police department. I was
All
guessing.
my options are mobile. So flexibility is the key to success in emergency management. Even the emergency operations center, even in this room or wherever it moves to, it has to be multi-use. So wherever we end up, it has to just be multi-use in a safe place that we can govern and deal with the emergencies. And then when it comes to my location, I'm all over the city. I'm basically living out of backpacks and mobile radios, and it's wherever we need to go is wherever those places are. All these options work fine.
Anybody else have questions of Rick or Karen? Got to give them equal time, Jason. Thank you.
I do have a question for Rusty. How would that affect your job with two locations for IT?
You're gonna have to duplicate some of your resources. I can probably access a lot of the one side or the other remotely for a lot of that. And then I can always go to that site if there's major issues, but I deal with a lot of stuff remotely now, so it probably isn't gonna affect that much. It's just gonna be maintaining two systems, basically.
All right.
What's next?
They have a slide. I saw it earlier.
Oh.
You're well segue.
The next step in staff is already working on it is to set up and be ready for a meeting on March 28th. So we can talk about what the options are to pay for the two facilities that you looked at in the past couple of days. And we will provide that information. It'll be in conjunction with our financial advisor. And we will include all options, whether we think they'll be palatable. We'll give you everything that we can. And we'll just see. There's just going to be some hard decisions to be made.
And the food tax debt service put us where?
We don't know. We've only had 2 quarters. This last quarter was down quite a bit. The first quarter was like 12,000. This quarter was like 100,000. But when I'm talking to people in the city, they say it's just been a very slow march too. So but anyway, we'll take a look and see what the numbers come in at. We'll look at other options.
So you're not willing to make an estimate now on what kind of debt service that will carry for a bond?
No. Sorry, we just don't know. I mean, I do have some numbers. I don't know if they're, we asked the financial people. I thought I had it. It's got to be here. To give you an idea, if, assuming that we were to do a $12,000 project at Cannon Beach Elementary,
12,000?
I'm sorry,
Sounds good.
It's more than that.
we're not just used to saying millions around here, that much. It's hard to get it out. That would, right now, under current financial conditions, that would require about $750,000 debt service over 30 years. But we've already borrowed
The 12.
6 million. And so it would be something less than the 750. For a 25 million, it'd be about $1.5 million. And at the, when we were talking about the using the funds from the PFT would generate about 880. And that was thought to be conservative at the time. And I don't think we're going to see 880 at least this year. So what you're talking about is the difference is probably going to be something between maybe 700 and 1.5, I'm sorry, 700,000 and 1.5 million. And then potentially, depending on what we do, you have the potential for selling this property. And then also, I think that there was a question about TLT. 1% increase on TLT would generate about $500,000 annual revenue, although it's a revenue that would continue to grow with inflation. That would be $500,000 and $350,000 in debt service for the Cannon Beach Elementary project. I'm sorry, $350,000 in debt service would acquire $5.4 million for the Cannon Beach Elementary project in principle. But we'll be talking about other things.
Yeah, that's
supplement that.
for now.
Yeah, we can supplement that.
We recognize giving you a lot in the last 2 days.
Yeah, to be
I
my.
feel like I'm going on a shopping spree.
I think one of what we feel the reason that we pushed this one forward and the reason Bruce had us do that is to make sure you had a full picture of both, because they're both large commitments and making sure that you know, and as I said last night, and I'll say it again today, we are here to support the decisions you make. And however that looks, we're in the trenches with you. So however you want that, but we want to give you as clear a picture as we could.
Thank you.
And we'll do the same thing for the financing side. Then hard decisions.
So do you have another slide?
Now, which that next steps,
Oh,
they think the next step we understand is the 28th.
funny.
That to talk about what those look like, and we will plan on having representatives here for that.
For both sides of the picture.
Yes,
Project.
it'll be Leslie and Dustin.
Okay,
I'm gonna be in the woods, so I can't come. Sorry.
right.
I'm unattaching the kids from electronics.
Good for you. Okay, does anybody have any closing comments? Words of wisdom? Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.